Hello and welcome to the latest Monty Dean show podcast, number 10. I've gone to double digits, so huzzah. Today I'm lucky enough to be joined by the Viking, as I call him. I kid, of course. I call him Viking, who is a host on Revolution Radio with the show the Galactic Interstellar Council. And how are you, sir?
Doing good, Monty. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity as well, because I can't talk for an hour. Well, I can, but it'll be boring. So I work better when I can talk to people. For those who aren't aware of the show that you do, can you do a quick rundown of what actually happens? Because I do try and catch every show. I'm a little bit behind, but I do find it fascinating.
Well, so first of all, we're all on a mission here on this planet for our own specific skill set and skill art to ground the energetics and to be able to participate in this grand experiment of this transition that we're all experiencing into this new paradigm. So about 5 years ago, I started getting these downloads where you got to go on the radio. You got to go on the radio. This is the last thing I ever thought about was going on the radio.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity. So my soul grouping was basically saying, okay, your mission here is to go on the radio. And so I just finally had the opportunity to be a guest on a couple shows, and just kind of, it's just interesting where this information just comes to you, and you got to start validating and understanding that this information is specific for you when it comes in a form of a epiphany or vision or an understanding. And I just started to validate it and nurture it, and got on it started out as the Interstellar Council, and we basically are we as a council we discuss the current theme or the energetics that this planet is experiencing in tandem with the expansion, the auditing of our soul grouping and the rest of the universe. So there's three of us, and we get guests on. They're usually galactics or elementals. There's as many elemental races out there as galactics. And the elemental race is basically of the Earth. So they're caretakers of the Earth, and galactics are more, cerebral and physicists, and they're, trying to understand the matrix through their brain. And so we started this venture. It's about 3.5 years now, and it's just more of a spontaneous event. Each show builds upon the next as we aggress through this tenure of experience and the auditing process of our karmic encumbrances and our PTSD, and trying to resolve ourselves to our true reflection of life, so we can have an engagement that's more benevolent and more of a unity consciousness on this planet.
Yeah. By listening to the shows, it's a story unfolding. It's not a drama or a soap opera, but there is as you build, where you learn information, it's that type of story where there's a through line.
As Michael, Archangel Michael, he actually likes to be referred to as Michael, often says, it's like climbing a ladder. And it's really true, because each show I break down a code. So code is just an idea. It comes to me as an idea or a file of information, and then I have to unpack it to my listening audience. And once I engage this in my theorem, it drops into my DNA as a codex.
Okay.
Right? And so each week I get these brand new, it's like an expansion. It's just my understanding expands, and I bring it to the council, and we talk about it.
Yep. You're frozen at the moment, so I'm not sure what happened to your camera there. Still can hear you perfectly fine, but your picture's frozen.
Okay.
There we go. See, we mentioned it and it worked. Such power we will. Now, you mentioned two other people, Conrad and Christopher. Who are they? Short version. Very simple question. How did you get in contact with them?
Conrad was a guest on a prior show that I was also a guest on, and there's just synchronicity. I mean, just every situation, like you and I, Monty, there's synchronicity here. We've definitely bumped shields together. I'm sure this is not our first rodeo on this planet.
Yeah.
And so Conrad just kind of came in, and I had this affinity for his character. He's what's known as he has an innocence. And he has the innocence about him where he's just true to heart, and he's also an Arcturian, and he's very analytical. He brings to the council the physics of the equation, which then when he has his cosmic report, which we open with, it gives me a foundation to be able to to continue on with a series of monologues. And Christopher, we basically throw the ball back and forth. And Christopher I met him on Wolf Spirit Radio on JP's show. He came on as a guest psychic. You would call him a psychic.
Yeah.
What he is a medium. He has the ability of falling back into his theta, and it allows these galactic and elemental entities to, I call it Shalako, where he literally takes over his body, and then they speak freely. And he has this. So when he basically joined the show, we became the Galactic Interstellar Council. And so we do the first hour where we just kind of break down the theme of the day. And the second half, we bring in whoever is there to pick up the talking stick, and it's either an elemental or a galactic or an expression. It can be an expression.
Yep.
Conscious expression will come through him for a question and answer series.
Yeah, the format works quite well, and the dynamic that the three of you have, you're all your own character, if that's the right word, and it works quite well, the interaction as well, because Conrad he's an engineer, and he does a lot of construction in a certain way. Like, he's very mechanical and building, which is, I guess, that leans towards that analytical mind, which, like, the shows that I've been listening to, him and people around him in the 3D seem to have car trouble a lot.
Karma.
Which is fascinating, how energetics play out in the physical. Not saying he ignores them, but it's like there was one guy, like, he moves to some place and there was a car there and they couldn't move it, and eventually they moved it because it didn't work. And there was a story of, like, he knew, I think it was himself or our family members. There was 3 cars all involved that all just stopped, which could mean anything, really.
Yeah, that was Mercury retrograde in full expression.
Yes.
Things just kind of stop working, and the energetics here is just really amazing, because the last guest I had on was a celestial convergence, which is an expression that came from her planet. She is a planet, and she talks about these energetics being light and sound, ones and zeros. This oscillation of frequency is what creates matter. It creates our own expression, and as we, in tandem with our DNA and chakras, we go up and down and combine our chakras together to be able to engage in life. And it's all frequency. It's all base dynamics of energetics. And what we're being faced with now in this time of trial and tribulation is this dark forces, this deep state, the cabal, in our government and geopolitical status, which is actually controlled by the more of a galactic force, the benevolent galactic forces of the Dark Orions, the Archons, the Dracos, the Anunnaki, and all the way down to the reptilians, have been basically, controlling them to control us in this density, this frequency.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, where I think it was on the last round with Planet Collingwood, that you pointed out that there's factions. So you can't just say, oh, it's all reptilians. It's like, well, it's not all reptilians. It's like with humanity, there's certain factions, and there's like the Cabal or the Illuminati or whatever label. It's just not one group. It's a bunch of groups working together, which kind of leads into what we're seeing unfolding here, where in the Wizard of Oz analogy, the curtain's been pulled back and we can see it's not just one man or one person. And the Black Hats, because I used to say Team Dark, but it's more of a League of Dark because it's different factions all working together. They're losing, and so they're all fighting with themselves as well as trying to keep the global narrative going. And that's why it's just, like, I'm sure you've stepped back in a neutral observer, and there's an element of comedy. Like, the whole thing seems to be a joke. Everything's falling apart, and I'm sure we can get into the pandemic and everything else like that. Apparently, you can't really say what it is because YouTube starts shadow banning and everything, so we'll work around that. But yeah, it's with the energy that we're seeing. The light is exposing the shadow, and so that, I mean, people's reactions have been, "Oh, the world's a terrible place; it's getting worse." Well, in a way, it's been the same, but where now the awareness of all those chicanery has been exposed, and at the same time, they're losing grip on their control.
If you look at it, kind of like Chicago. You got these different mobs, and each mob has a different district with a different agenda. One might be involved in prostitution, and one's doing drugs, and one's doing, involved in the civic and the judicial structure. It's very similar to these dark forces around the world, geopolitically and geoeconomically. They've had a stranglehold on us, for 26,000 years, and they've, in their stratagem, they've divided and conquered us with these precepts of what I refer to as viruses in their DNA, these precepts of fear and judgment and chaos. The dystopia has been a programming, and this programming reflects in the energetics, which keeps us stapled in to this matrix. It's literally, it's been their stratagem to maintain this agenda. And they've done it successfully up until about 4 or 5 years ago, when, again, they've done their best behind the curtain, as you point out in the Wizard of Oz. Behind the curtain, they have done their best because people have been basically compliant and complacent in their field of awareness. They basically they're bought into it with this mindset, and because they believe it to be true, it manifests as their reality. And again, when you're looking at truth as an ephemeral state, it's actually, when it comes down to the resolving and the waking up out of this precept, the truth becomes a reflection of who you are, not what you're told to be.
Yeah, and especially this year, 2020, which is fascinating. I always point out the Prime Creator is the best joke writer, where it doesn't, just or she. Just 2020 hindsight, 2020 eyesight, and this year alone, a lot of people, because of what's been happening, there's been a shift, there's an awakening, because. We've chatted about this before. I think we're on the same page with the bioweapon was released way too early, by about 12 to 18 months early. And I think that was a Prime Creator move, where it's like, oh, you want to do this? Let's do it now. Pink, let's do it now. And that's why nothing has worked. There are people dying, unfortunately. There is I think, 98% of the population survives, but you can see the plans with bunny ears that with the whole lockdown and economic and everything else like that. They're all the plans that were supposed to happen when the dangerous part of the virus came out. However, it was released too early, or it was a weak form, or Andrew Bartzis points out it's a karmic resolution, and that's why it sort of came out. And if the team darts on the back foot because it's too early and they're scrambling to try and keep the narrative and the control under thing. Like I actually saw a photo. I remember it because it was in Scotland, but a lot of people were at the beach, and it's an interesting sentence to say Scotland and beach, because you don't think think rain, highlands, and snow, but because of the weather, which we can get into about what's happening energetically, human residents and weather and the placement of the solar system and the galactic sun. So there's 45 minutes covered. That people are defying because it's been. What are we up to now? Time's changing as well. It's what 3 months, two and a half, however long this shutdown thing is working. People are defying the authorities because they've said doom, gloom, fear porn, and it didn't happen.
So the agenda here, if you look at the algorithms of the deep state and what their main concern here is the fact that we are waking up and that they're going to lose the election. They're really freaked out that if they lose the election and once they give up their Congress, once they give up their seat, their elected position, they will be tried in military tribunal for crimes of treason, sedition, and crimes against humanity. They will be tried, and they know this.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to prolong their tenure, even through fraudulent voting practices. That's why they're wanting to have. If you look at the two main algorithms that are coming out of their agenda, it's vaccine and mail-in voting. So. Mm-hmm. So the prime creator in the Galactics realized that this was going to be a huge overage when they were supposed to release this so-called virus, and they made it possible. So it actually was supposed to be released around September, October, because in that timeline, it would have proved to have kept us housebound, and they would have had a vaccine ready. Again, Bill Gates has 5 pharmaceutical labs developing this vaccine, which has all these nasty components, of which they're putting in what's known as this nanotechnology, which is organic. It's a fungus that gets activated with 5G, and it was going to create a huge pandemic and force this whole thing to collapse. So what happened was that they, as far as how it got released, was a technician was offered a sum of money to smuggle a vial out and to meet in the marketplace where they know that was ground zero. That's why they kept on saying it was bat meat.
Yep.
And deal went south, and he was shot and killed, and the vial broke and got released. And I do believe it was a lesser form. It wasn't the virulent strain, because if it was a true pandemic, as we've shared before, pandemic is logarithmic. It goes from 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000 to 1 million, and the deaths start to occur in that same vein, where you get as much as 80% of the population dying. This is not a pandemic. This is a COVID strain of a virus, which goes back 20 years to SARS. And this is COVID-19. It's a COVID.
Yeah.
And it's really just the Galactics are saying it's not even a virus. It's just it's a subterfuge in its matrix to create these symptoms. So it got released, and it gave both sides opportunity to negotiate this new field of operation that has incurred humanity into the subject state. So now you have both parties playing out their agenda with this current the climate that was on one side, they're keeping us subjugated and they're keeping us housebound. They're trying to prolong this as long as possible. They're talking about they're already trying to terraform our conscious awareness with the second wave, and the second wave is going to come. They'll have a virus, and you won't be able to leave the house unless you have a passport that says you took the virus. This is extreme measures of their desperation. I mean, absolutely extreme measures.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you got Trump saying, "Hey, there's no, hydrochloroquine with a Z-Pack, take care of it. And it's not only a vaccine, a preventative, but it's a cure." And we can go back to, trying to stabilize and create incentives for our economy, and his agenda is moving forward. The whole QVism and where we're going, and we go all kind of the constitutional matrix that they're adhering to here, and it's just an opportunity. So you see, there's an agenda behind the agenda, and the galactic agenda was that they hoped that in this, the dark would be exposed, and it's working because hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people are waking up.
Yeah, even and this is not a derogative term, just in the 3D, where as I usually say, that the false reality that the mainstream media puts forward, even like through news programs, which is always from a place of fear, they still say that the world is, we're all fantastic and the world's awesome, but the news bulletins are fear, sports, cat up a tree, here's the weather. And a lot of people are waking up waking up to, well, hang on, you said it's this, but clearly it's not. And that's allowing people, especially with the lockdown, that they haven't got that 40-hour-a-week job to distract them on a certain level, and they're decompressed. The sleeping patterns have probably changed, and they've watched all of Netflix, and so they start finding videos like this in a certain aspect. And so it's interesting that the information war has stepped up, because, have you heard the latest for what Joe Rogan has done?
No.
He has signed a exclusive deal with Spotify for $100 million, and he's leaving YouTube and iTunes. I think they're going to put clips of his podcast on YouTube, but not the whole thing. So if you want to see the whole thing on audio and video, it will just be on Spotify. And it's because of how YouTube is censoring, and it's his way of going to battle with the big tech companies. And it's actually in his contract that he's allowed to have Alex Jones on the show. So I think that starts in about September. And I'm not sure if it's a complete changeover, but that's a major shift in the media world, because if he had certain guests on or subjects on, YouTube would censor it or not put it up. And that's not his cup of tea.
Well, the censorship is just their desperate need to keep us asleep at the wheel. That's been their weapons of mass distraction and dystopia. Is to look over here but don't look here, and to keep us in this energetic, this mind spin, this mindset of absolute fear. I mean, it's all fear based. It's fear based information, because when we're in fear, we're not in our self-reflection. We're not in the essence of our true expression of life. We're not coming from our self-mastery or creative will. We're coming from our left brain of survival, trying to negotiate our needs and wants of addiction, and our ego is trying to just find a way to navigate this terrain of dystopia. It's just so evident. But one of the symptoms here in waking up is absolute confusion. I mean, there's this 24-year-old kid. He spent 2 weeks just going down the rabbit hole, starting with 9/11, and 2 weeks later he said, "I wish I'd never gone this route, because now I know all this information, and I'm awake, and I don't know what to do." And it is kind of daunting.
Yeah, and there's people like us to help sort of guide. I use humor as well. Like 9/11 itself, if you just look at the official story, I think about 3 words in it is actual truth. The rest of it is like, oh, maybe. That was a major starting point for where we are now, where people are waking up to what's happening in the world, because the official story doesn't make sense. They don't even mention Building 7, but there's footage of it kinking. 3 buildings in New York collapsed into their own footprint in less than 10 seconds in free fall, and that's not what buildings. Physics changed that day. And also you can see how just the war on terror and going in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it is quite daunting to sort of tap into that now, where your paradigm's completely shifted, and it's people dealing with fear, which links back to the virus as well. Like, part of how the virus works is by being in fear, because it lowers your frequency and it affects your immune system. And because we're co-creating, I'm not saying if you think it, you'll get the virus, but if you're constantly in stress and in that reptilian brain, which makes me giggle occasionally because I'm reptilian, you can not attract it, but you may even create it. Like, I think with the energetics, we're not manifesting like in 5D, which is instant, but we have more control. We have the ability to have more control over our reality. That's a good way of saying it, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the Galactic even said that with the pockets of the world where it was hit the worst was catalyzed with the 5G technology. So they're already using it as a model. But this whole, as you're pointing out, it's energetics. It's all energetics and keeping us stapled into this dystopia. It really is giving us opportunity here, because as you wake up, you have to understand and start to give yourself permission, because one of the greatest challenges you have is you're going to start to contrast those around you. You're going to start to people are going to go look at you and kind of wonder where you went. It's not you anymore. Who are you?
Yeah.
You're a conspiracist, and literally you do get alienated. I mean, I've learned that the people I talk to are mostly the people I talk to when I go on the radio. And
yeah,
because people are afraid of this new technology. They're afraid of venturing outside of their domicile of this finite conviction of their dogmatic, pragmatic, illusory reality. They've found security in their needs and wants of addiction and navigating through their ego, and this is a whole brand new expression. I mean, we're in between worlds. We're in between 2 worlds right now. This is year 0. And we're leaving this subjugated, finite structure of 3D and entering into an opportunity to find ourselves in full expression of life. And how you navigate this is going to be very unique to you, because your lessons of evolution and resolve are going to be the minute you walk out your door. Every experience that you experience is in tandem with your karmic encumbrances that are going to show you arenas of your life that you're still being hooked into this dementia. As you move forward and want to have a vision, life is going to show you that which is still holding you from it. And these are the greatest challenges. Again, alienating almost 90% of the people around you, and now knowing that there's work to be done.
Yeah, and by changing your own frequency, you'll attract different people, and you let go of things that no longer serve you. It doesn't mean you're going to walk away from your family, because there's a reason why you're in that family. That you take on that lineage, and they're in a way a good lesson for reflection as well. Because sometimes it hasn't happened a lot with me, but I have heard someone explain it, that sometimes the family is to put you in, to humble you in a certain way spiritually, where instead of just hanging out with your parents and your nephews and nieces and so on and so forth, and just enjoying family life with each other, you don't start, at Christmas start screaming out 9/11 was an inside job. So like, you've been saying that for 4 months. We don't want it. You know what I mean? There's a humbling aspect in that reflection. It's like, well, you can fight the good fight, but you don't have to be on, like in a comedic term. You don't have to be on all the time.
Well, it's important to understand that you're coming to your this new platform, the negotiation from your passion of your heart and releasing yourself from these edicts of fear and control and subjugation. Again, two worlds. You're in between in this chrysalis of life. We are going from worm to caterpillar to butterfly here, and it is a personal sojourn. You can't evangelize it. You can't go out and try to change people around you, because you got to take a snapshot. I call it a snapshot. Take a snapshot. This is who they are. Everything else you're projecting onto them, and they are there to be in contrast or to be in synergy. There's two roles to play here. Like the deep state, these dark arts are giving us in this duality, swinging the pendulum, this opportunity, an alternative to understand the sociopathic, psychopathic mind, so that we can then develop the antigen of our compassion. Without them being on point, without them being in contrast to who we are, we would not be able to gain this new understanding. And this is a new understanding, being able to find this repose within. If you look at all of the spiritual and Eastern religions around the world, they all speak of it, that truth and your true reflection comes from within.
Yeah.
And so when you're dealing with friends and family, just be a beacon of light. Smile at them and realize that, it might be a month, it might be a year, but they're going to start to turn to you, as you pointed out, Monty. They're going to start to turn to you and think that you're not so crazy, as they go through this cathartic, the birthing process here is you're fetal and cathartic, and you're waking up and you're dazed and confused. And this is, as you point out again, why we're here.
Yeah, and for those listening and watching, one spiritual lesson while going through this is to not turn into a 3-year-old and keep saying, I told you so. Maybe once or twice, but if you keep it, that's not the point. When people's like, oh, you were right. And it's like, okay, just don't pull back and, I was right. I was, that old told you so. You may say it once, but don't hang on it for 14 years because that's kind of childish. And with and it's the energetics as well. I've noticed with friends and family, I can't open with, we're multi-dimensional beings and we're transcending frequencies and moving forward unless they're part of on that path. However, by just sharing information, like I know you come onto my roundtable and talk about the finance aspect, as well as the Schumann resonance. Yeah, just stuff that is tangible that anyone can to latch on. And most people get it. It's sort of we've nicknamed it woo-woo. You don't go too woo-woo, but you can sort of lead them up to the door, and it's their choice if they go through. But the information that you've shared to get to the woo-woo door still helps them. Where, like, you point out where I'm trying to think of an example. A made-up example is like, vaccines on paper look good, but this one's got cancer in it. So why would you have this one? And if you present it in a nice, friendly way, and most people use that. If you use logic on a certain level, they get what you're saying. Who knows how they take in the information, and they don't change where I still have to pay into retirement and stuff like that. But a lot of people I'm aware of, I think they're down to the choice now of letting go of the old world, if I can use the analogy that we've been using for the show, where they can see the system of domination, blame, shame, and guilt and control doesn't work. and especially doesn't work anymore because as they're ramping it up, they're exposing themselves. And now people are making that connection of like, well, I don't want to be punched in the face. Let's stop that. And it's interesting. Everyone, it's an inside job for everybody, and they're going through their own journey.
Well, what's interesting here when you're listening to the lamestream media, you have to really have you have to be able to discern. I listen to it to get a pulse on the current affairs of where they're at in their stratagem, where they're at with their agenda. I see the words coming out of their mouth, and I know that they're just talking into a mirror. It's all self-reflection, and their agendas are not working. They're shooting themselves in the foot. It's actually pretty embarrassing to see them, to see their control mechanism collapse. And people are waking up. Now here, when you're talking about the metaphysical, so-called woo-woo world of spiritualism, in order to make it into this, where we're transitioning into this new geopolitical, geoeconomic, spiritual, physical, and nature on this planet, we're going to a brand new expression, brand new paradigm. You don't have to be a yogi meditating on the mountain, with a vegetarian diet. You can just be who you are, and the most important aspect here is just being your passion. Because if you're not locked in the mindset, lockstep, being tossed around with the strength, the marionette strings of poverty and judgment and despair, you start to realize that you can cut these strings. You can cut these strings and actually manifest you. We are co-creators, as you're pointing out. We are creator beings. You can create your reality in dystopia, or you can back up, wake up, disentangle, and realize that you can manifest and create your world in your passion. And again, it's just being on point here. You don't, as an analogy where there's 8 billion logs, humanity is, or mankind actually, is log jammed in their evolution. And the first wave to break free were what's known as the light workers. They got their epiphanies. They were able to disentangle and see the atrocities in the lives. And in doing so, you start to negotiate from your heart chakra, which then allows a quantum dynamics to your claircognizant and clairvoyant nature as your brain starts to become a binary function, and this portal opens up. And they're basically here negotiating and trying to go on YouTube, where they have sessions. Or, it's a very, very unique genre of humanity that has been in this first wave. The second wave is right now. This COVID, this COVID, this garbage, this whole campaign around COVID is forcing the common person, the truck driver, the bartender, the person, the school teacher, they're all waking up and seeing that there's something afoot. There's something afoot here that's not making sense, that it's kept us in this subjugated state. And this is the second wave. We are awakening. You don't have to be, as long as you're in your passion and you can disentangle and start to divine your life in the sovereign essence of being, you're on point.
Yeah, you can be a gardener, whatever that is chosen by yourself, or to your highest vibration as well. And the interesting thing from the whole pandemic shutdown, it's just not the health aspect of it. Like this whole year has proven that nothing works. The politics doesn't really work. The health system is, everything's corrupt. And at the same time, it's just not a health scare. A knock-on effect is the economy. And it's interesting to see where governments have got all this money to help save people, to try and save the economy. So well, why couldn't you invest? You got $14 trillion to help people. Why can't you put that into health? Or it's the tricks don't work anymore. The spell is over. Even with 9/11 and maybe a year or two ago, a lot of people started to be aware of 9/11 because of when it happened. There was a spell on it and all of fear, and nearly 2 decades later, it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? It's because a lot of there was no weapons of mass destruction. All the lying, the trying to create a false narrative. People are seeing through the narrative. I should have started with that and condensed that whole paragraph. But yeah, we're seeing the changing of narratives, and the global narratives trying to be held up with sticks and bubblegum and duct tape.
Well, the weapons of mass distraction has morphed into weapons of mass destruction has morphed into mass distraction.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more hopeful. I mean, these stimulus packages that are coming down, they're feeding smaller corporations and businesses, and corporations that are literally the indice of our country: steel industry, manufacturing. I believe that a lot of what's been foretold as far as going into banks and whatnot, there's been two different stimulus packages. One has been for the country, and then of course the Federal Reserve has its own $3 trillion going to central banks.
Yeah.
So that's fiat currency. That's fiat currency being delved out to a fiat system, trying to keep it alive. It's a dead horse, and they're dragging it down the road, saying it's still alive. It's still alive.
Yeah.
But the stimulus package for the country is actually working. People are getting, people are actually reluctant to go back to work because they're making more money on unemployment. And so what has to happen here is the next signet for this to move forward here is in his next stimulus package, if we see that he literally takes away the payroll tax, which he's talking about doing. This is the first stage of the Jasara and this Nasara, is he does away with a payroll tax. That's going to create 30% more stimulus or currency in people's paycheck. And businesses that are going out, 40% of businesses are going out and they will return. People are going to be out of work. But as this stimulus takes place and the currencies start to become liquid, you're going to see brand new industries pick up again because people are going to have money to spend, and these businesses that went out will be reinvented, and we're going to have a brand new, I believe, a brand new economic structure. Because when that happens, then the next step after the stimulus package, he will actually do away with the Federal Reserve and create a United States Treasury note, which is the gold-backed, asset-backed currency that's going to be used around the world. So all the countries will then become sovereign, and we'll have free world trade based on their assets. And this might take 2 or 3 years, but I really see that the way it's going, the amount of disclosure that's taking place, and they're, he sent the military over to Europe, 35,000 troops to do mass arrests, and they've sent over 650 plane loads of gold, that they've been recovering to be able to back our currency. And 6 weeks ago, there was this huge 10-year. We see tanks on the road. We see they're going to move into the city. Well, no, those were last year he gave $1.2 billion to special branches of the military to do underground warfare, which are called tunnel rats. In Vietnam, they're called tunnel rats. And they even have equipment that goes before them to test the air. And they basically, in the last 3 weeks, have been a huge mop-up of underground bases and underground complexes that were housing children and slave market and their drug tunnels. They were basically cleaning them up and blowing them up. So, as far as disclosure goes, it's happening, but it's happening behind the scenes. It has to happen.
Well, I do know you've mentioned it a lot on the shows that you do, that some of this stuff has to stay hidden because the shock of all the bad things would be too much for the general public. You can't sort of just go, oh, here's cannibalism. Just the paradigm shift is way too much.
Yeah, just mentioning that Beyonce is head witch for these spirit cooking events. You start to drop in people like Ellen DeGeneres and Oprah and Tom, and all the actors and the musicians and the CEOs around the country. I mean, and Bush, Clinton, the Obama administration. You can't perp walk these because our conscious awareness can't handle it. They will be taken out behind the scenes, but there will be some disclosure. Humanity cannot move forward without disclosure and prosperity, and I believe both are in motion. They just have to come in gradual, like we refer to as being drip fed, or I see it as more or less the ascension bends, where you have to go up one level at a time to create an equilibrium in your soul. So every time he opens his mouth, every time Trump gets on a podium and speaks, he is terraforming human consciousness with these draining the swamp. The Obamagate, and he uses the word virus. Well, the virus, you can replace that with the Democratic Party. We're going to rid this country of the virus. It should never have been. He's constantly saying this should never have happened to anybody. It's the worst thing that could have happened. And so, he is out there disclosing and getting people prepared.
At the same time, you can see a correlation with what the Schumann Resonance has done this year, where it used to be like you could see patterns like, oh, there's a spike here and there was a fluctuation there. And as we've talked about over the last 2-3 months, where it's gone gangbusters intense, where it does look like birth pains, where instead of turning the frequency to whatever straight away, you're doing that slow build up. I think this week it got up to 110 hertz, and you could see it was like a wall of white. And it's because I guess it reminds me of the rapture. If our consciousness went from 3 to 5, we wouldn't take the body with us because of the consciousness. The atomic structure wouldn't be able to handle it. What I think about, because we've done this many times on other planets and all through eternity. I think the difference is we're taking our body with us this time when we ascend and move forward. That could be because of the DNA technology, being that we're a mixture of all the different races in our DNA. So we've got like a access all area passport, and we can go anywhere in creation. And that's why certain elements of the deep state and the cabal don't like that, because they can't vibrate on certain planets and go anywhere because of their low density.
This is true. They say it's the third try for this ascension to occur in this body. The last try was the Atlanteans, and they blew themselves up with nuclear technology. That's why you have Gobi, the green glass in the Gobi Desert. That was the nuclear blast. And with that they had to push a restart button. But in this particular expression, we have been going back to going back to even the beatniks of the 50s, or the Bolsheviks. They've slowly been bringing in this concept of rebellion and concept of that there's a deep state, going into the beatnik movement, into the into the 60s, the hippie movement, turn on, tune in, and drop out, but without the use of drug or sex. It is tuning into this new paradigm, and you're turning on to your essence, your passion, your negotiation of life now is more free will, and you're dropping out of this matrix, and so in '87, when the harmonic convergence came, that was a major signet where we stopped incarnating on this planet. We the old souls or the population that has been in this karmic cycle and this karmic gauntlet for hundreds of times and thousands of years have finally hit a point of repose where now we are in our clarion call, as you would put it, the rapture or this revelations of the Bible. I feel that these are all prophecies, but they're not for us to be in fear. They're to tell us that, well, this is a time of trials and tribulations, and we need to do our best and rise to the occasion and just to shine as bright as we can in this transition. Because from the harmonic convergence, then came the ending of the Mayan calendar, which basically put us in this brand new paradigm. So 7 years ago, so we're in these 7-year galactic cycles, which ended in 2019, and now we're in a brand new 7-year cycle, which is year zero. This is year zero in this new transit, and we're all here, playing our part, doing our role, because we're all representing either an elemental or a galactic soul grouping that is counting on us to make it through this trials and tribulations, to resolve our traumas, to come to this new platform of negotiation, so that we have a balanced. It's all about the emotions and the frequencies of our emotions and their sensuality, because that's what they weaponize. They weaponize their emotions with trauma, and that became a major virus in our DNA. As we resolve our traumas, the membrane between the third and fourth chakra dissolves, and we now have access to our free will and choice and the expressions of life through our heart chakra, activating the binary function of the left and right brain, allowing us a portal to our quantum dynamics. And this is what they don't have. The galactic races here created this grand experiment in this petri dish that we know as planet Earth. Because Earth is at a nexus point in the galaxy. It has a way of transferring energy to other planets. So as we evolve, our energetics affects the nexus of their planet. But the emotional subtle body is what they are hoping for, because they had to they hit a plateau in their evolution by negating it out of their DNA, because they saw it causing too many problems. But what they didn't count on was the fact that this is how we engage and find true enjoyment through our creative will and expression.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Thank you for mentioning it, because the ramification out through creation is just not here. For those Viking's talking about government, he lives in the United States, and he means the United States government, which the United States in a lot of ways is the front line of what's happening on the planet. Apart from China and maybe Russia, but it's sort of the only superpower. My perception of what happened, the United States was built up as the strong man of their global tyranny, but now they're trying to collapse that and attack the American people, because these elites think that they're scum, and this, which even goes back to the revolution back in 1776. It's because you told the king to stick it. And these people don't like losing control. And so the United States is an experiment. Even Australia is an experiment. We still are connected to the Queen. But apart from that, it's very similar to Canada, if you follow my drift. And so it's it's the US dollar is the global currency, which is linked to the oil. And we know what's been going on, like the last 5 months of this year. Everything is just totally out of whack. I can see why, I think Project Looking Glass, or they couldn't see past 2012. All they saw was a white horse. No one saw this coming. Like 2020, everyone, they survived 2019. It's like, oh, I've got great plans for 2020. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. This is my year. And then bam, the Prime Creator let the virus go. And here we are where time's flying, but also standing still, which I guess is that 0 point. Feeling.
No, I just can't believe how quickly these weeks are flying by. My gauge is when I do my show on Fridays, and like tomorrow's my show, and I just thought I had it yesterday. It's like,
yeah.
So the more you again disengage and find yourself in your passion of life, either skill sets, skill craft, and skill art, you're not thinking anymore. Thinking is gone. You're starting to develop eyes that see, ears that hear. You're starting to actually become the template of your expression rather than be subjugated by their agenda. It is a different field of expression, and it is a challenge, because in order to go from one world to the next, you have to let go of your emotional encumbrances. This is one of the strongest and the hardest lessons for us to achieve in this body, in this lifetime, is all of our unresolved and static energetics that we have created in past lives. We now have to resolve them in this lifetime. And so this is the swing of the pendulum of the duality. If you were backstabbed, or if you had someone steal from you, or if you were lied to, or if you were in a relationship that was in betrayal, or if you were raped, this is a tough one here. It's because you incurred this in a past life, and you need to experience the energetics that you created. The energetics that you created in these ones and zeros of this density, you need to experience what that is like. And then you have to find forgiveness. You have to find non-judgment. I mean, I finally came through my resolve. I just realized that all of the incursions that were giving me night terrors, and that were giving me this arena and theater of pain and suffering, I finally can say I can look back and they're not affecting me. Because the resolve here is forgiving your actions. We know not what we do. Everybody on this planet is in pain and suffering. We're all trying to negotiate the best we can. And in this current structure of this templated plane of reality, we are given the opportunity to experience what we have manifested in our karmic gauntlet. And through forgiveness, non-judgment, and surrendering the vindications of the ego of its needs and wants of addiction, by letting go and disentangling this false paradigm, you can find resolve. But you have to understand, the person that has created this situation, the person that's contrasted your karmic encumbrances and manifested that experience, is doing their job. It doesn't mean you have to forgive their actions, but they're doing their job because they are reflecting back at you that which you need to see and understand. This is tough. This is really tough.
Yeah. But the good news is, once you've checked off all those boxes, you don't have to go through it again. We're at that end where we're cleaning house and sweeping out all the old stuff. There's an interesting balance. I had a thought while you were talking, is that we are a perfect spark of the Creator, who happens to be in a human form, and we're not perfect. So if you make mistakes, the fun part of meditation is you're going to fail at it for a long time till you realize how to do it correctly. And that's part of the process, which is connected to seeing what the blockages are, or what needs to be resolved, or whatever trauma there is. You're human, you adapt, you're not perfect, so don't be so hard on yourself. Not you, Viking, obviously. I'm talking to the audience.
Well, mankind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that releases once I made that connection and then felt that thought, the pressure was just relieved a little bit. It's like, well, you're human. That you're designed to make mistakes. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to go invade a small country and cause genocide. That's not a mistake. But well, you've had that thought, haven't you? You know what I'm saying, though. Yeah.
I just had this amazing epiphany of an analogy, that the negotiation of this paradigm, this 4D chrysalis, the in-between worlds, is like trying to navigate through a house of mirrors. You see all your fractal realities, right? You've been in a house of mirrors, and you're bumping into mirrors, and you see your fractal realities that go on forever, and you're trying to find some sort of way to negotiate through this house of mirrors. And that's what it is, because this is what you're referring to, the multiverse of our human personality, is that we are fractaled. You know, the hats that we wear, the concepts that we hold to be true, that manifests our reality, creates a fractal paradigm. It's what you call soul shards. And all we're doing now is we're mending and healing. It's like having a mirror and you drop it and it's fragmented. This is our reality. So we're each piece of the puzzle is putting that piece of the mirror back together till finally you have a true reflection of self. And then the mirror disappears because now you are the mirror.
Yeah, and in the House of Mirrors analogy, basically you find the exit, and as you walk out, all those fractals are gone because the reflection's gone because you're not in the House of Mirrors in a basic way. So I like that. You write that down. That's good. I think. I think that's a perfect time to stop the interview because we've been going for an hour. So thank you for the lovely chat. No idea what that.
Getting a quick wrap up here.
Yep.
That just to understand that what we are doing here on this mission and be able to find resolve and balance in our emotional subtleties and our sexuality and our sensuality, we're bringing this brand new coding in the genetics of our DNA. So as we resolve ourselves, these viruses burn out and they get replaced with these codes that come in as epiphanies or visions or new understandings. As you engage them in life, then these codes become codexes, and the viruses that are keeping you from it burn out. And you are literally developing a brand new signature of your emotional sensuality, sexuality, never ever seen before in galactic history. Mm-hmm. And we are evolving into what's going to be known from mankind into a human galactic race. So this is our mission here, is to make it through this, because once we make it to the other end, and we've often shared this, Monty, the big banquet hall and the celebration, we'll be able to, everybody will come together in our galactic soul grouping, and all of our people that we've lost will be there. Yeah. That we could celebrate just the fact that we've made it, and we will be a brand new expression.
Yes, and happiness and heaven or 5D or however. It's interesting times, but it's fun times. And I still like the quote from John Lennon: in the end, everything's going to be all right. If it's not all right, it's not the end.
That's right.
However, we are near the end. Someone said we're at the end of the movie, and we're started the credits, and we're waiting for the epilogue. It's one way of sort of describing it. But that's sort of what we're seeing is people say it's the end game, but we're just here to change, and we've been doing the work.
I once told the Galactic that I see the end, but it's like being on your hands and knees on glass, and they said, well, if that's the way you want to end it, that's your choice, but you could be celebrating life through your passion by not involving yourself with the glass, not being on your hands, not being subjugated. You can choose how you want to end this, or how you want to begin this new tenure of existence. Thank you very much, Monty.
No, that's all right. I'll just leave with this because, Bruce McDonald sort of expanded on that analogy. To get to the end, we're crawling across a football field on glass and everything else like that. And then one of us, out of the three of us, I can't remember, maybe me, but I said, but yeah, we can, from what your Galactic said, if you want to do it that way, you can float across.
Exactly.
Remember, you can levitate.
you can if you give yourself that permission. Again, this whole journey is giving yourself permission and having the strength and courage to stand up and find your banner of truth, and realize that we're boots on the ground, and we are here as one.
Exactly. I think that's a beautiful time to stop. So if you enjoyed the interview, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll be back when I find someone else. But yes, we shall return because I like doing this. So see you soon, everyone.
It's a great job. Thank you.